and a lot going on right now. We're trying to figure out what exactly is going to happen in the Turkey-Russian relationship and Erdogan's relationship with Vladimir Putin after the horrific assassination yesterday, of the Russian ambassador in cold blood, caught on video, which the New York Times published online, which I thought was a little out of character, if you will, for them. And I wouldn't show it to your children because it is a real live assassination right on tape. Kind of an awful thing. CIA former Director James Woolsey. Director Woolsey, good to have you back.
Thanks, John. Good to be with you. My wife and I have a lot of family there in Richmond, so Merry Christmas to Gray and all the others.
All right, big shout out to your family. Director Woolsey, I want to get right to the Russian ambassador assassination in cold blood, shot in the back on video, released by the New York Times, shot 4 times in the back by what we now see as a terrorist. He then shot him 3 times when he was on the ground, 7 shots in him, he's dead. How could this happen? I mean, where was the security here?
I guess the rest of security thought that this guy was part of security. It's a strange situation because you got so many factions in that part of the world, in Turkey and the Balkans. This may not exacerbate the problems between Russia and Turkey. They may work it out, in part because at least one person I rely on these things tells me that the assassin was a Sunni Arab, not a Turk, and that they are one of the oppressed minorities in that part of the world. But it is a complicated situation, and Putin seems committed to taking over from us the kind of management of the conflict in the Middle East and deciding who fights when and where. And it's not good for us, but I think he may get past this with Turkey.
So when you say that Putin wants to be managing basically this war on terror in this region, how does that affect the United States interests, sir?
I think it affects us badly. It keeps us from being the ones who are setting the standards and aiding who needs to be assisted, and having the leadership role we've had for well over half a century since we helped Harry Truman helped save Greece and Turkey from the communists. We're getting shouldered out, and it's our president's fault. He's the one who drew the red line and said the Syrians could not cross it and kill their own people with chemical weapons, and they crossed it, and he kind of shrugged and handed the problem off to Russia, and that was, I guess, about 4 years ago, and Russia still has it.
Okay, so if you look at the Syrian situation now, Director Woolsey, there's no way right now the Assad regime is going to get toppled by any kind of a military effort. Okay, those days are gone. He's staying. They're days, weeks, maybe hours from gaining all of Aleppo back. Has horrible of a humanitarian crisis as it is. Yeah. This is a civil war. This is what happens. They're trying to win. They're trying to get their city back. People die. It's horrible. But he's not going to get toppled. So what happens now? I mean, eventually they're going to keep pushing out until all of the rebels are driven out of Syria. We can't do anything about that. We don't even know who our allies are there, who our enemies are. What would be wrong with our policy of just getting the hell out of there?
Well, I think we may end up doing that, but I think that's not all we should do. We got 2 things we need to pay attention to that could help us in the long run, I think, in the war against terrorism and in this part of the world. One is we got to take on their ideology. We got to stop this nonsense of calling this violent extremism. The political correctness stuff is really very damaging. These are jihadis, and they are at war with us, and they want to kill us, and they're radical Islamists, and we ought to call it straight and take them on ideologically, and not let litigation from Islamic groups in the United States stop us. We ought to infiltrate their organizations and teach our own people, our own law enforcement people, about radical Islam and why they have to defend against it. I think that's one thing we've got to do that we're not even close to doing now. There's another one.
Now, did you ever go to Trump Tower and meet with the president-elect?
Yes, I did. I think that was a fanciful suggestion that about defense, but just in one publication. But I was asked to go meet with him, and I did.
How did your meeting go?
It's fine, and I'd met with him before when I came out for him back in August, late August. He's very cordial and relaxed and enjoyable to talk to. He in small meetings of 2, 3, 4 people. His shtick that he goes into when he's in front of 40 or 50,000 cheering millennials is not his manner and demeanor when he's in a small discussion with people he knows. Well,
that's what we have heard. Director Woolsey, what did you think of President-elect Trump's choice for Secretary of State, the CEO of ExxonMobil, Rex Tillerson?
I think it's fine. I think Tillerson is a straight shooter. If he works for ExxonMobil, he's going to do everything possible for ExxonMobil. If he works for the Department of State and the U.S. government, he's going to do everything possible for them. I think he's an extraordinarily able man, and I think with his background, he has the ability to help the rest of the cabinet, the president, to understand some of the issues related to energy, as well as to be our Secretary of State.
Director Woolsey, let's get to the terrorist attack. Another truck like they did in Nice, France in July, in Berlin. If you've ever been to Berlin during Christmas like I have, it's just you've been there, right? People out in the street. It's just a wonderful time.
Yeah. I lived there back in 1960 working in a refugee camp for helping Germans who were fleeing across the border.
Really?
When I was in freshman in college.
No kidding. So that was before...
1960, the year before the wall went up.
Before the wall, when people were just coming over there. So you were helping them do what? Like get from A to B?
I was Berlin? Actually working in one of the camps with 4 friends, and we were teaching English to the little kids who came over.
Remember when the Soviets first put up the wall? Were you there when they had first put it up? It was like 2 feet high, and they expected us to just come in and crash it down, remember? And we didn't do anything.
Yeah, I do remember. I was back in California by then, going to college, but I remember that whole sequence of things about the wall my image of communism is watching the Fopos arrest families trying to cross the street, because my refugee camp where I was working and living was right on the sector line, right near what became just later Checkpoint Charlie. And I could watch the Fopos grabbing people and keep dragging them back into East Berlin. That's been my image of communism ever since.
Those people that were there that saw that really made an impact, because that was the difference between freedom and totalitarianism. I remember going to Berlin as a young man. My father took me, and we were there during Christmas. I've told the story on the air for 2 weeks. And on the 13th day, my father took me to the wall. And it was like 2 weeks, all West Berlin and other areas. We went to Bavaria. But on the 13th day, just before we went home, I went to the wall and I went up it, and it was incredible. I mean, because spending 2 weeks in Berlin and West Berlin during Christmas, it was beautiful and jumping and colorful and clean. You could eat off the streets and people were happy. And I remember going to the top of the thing and looking over and seeing the towers, and then seeing the soldiers with, I guess, M16s prowling it, and then that no man's land. And then you peer over in East Berlin, and it was like the earth stood still since 1945, right? Everything drab, no color, buildings still not reconstructed after the war. It was horrible. I mean, and I remember my father saying to me, freedom, communism. Understand it? I'm like, yeah. And then he wouldn't go over. He wouldn't go over Checkpoint Charlie to East Berlin. And I'm like, well, why don't we go over there, Dad? He's like, because I might say something and I never get back. So I'm just not going to go.
We used to go over, when I was working in the refugee camp, we used to go over, there was no wall then, to the Humboldt University, which is just a couple hundred yards from the sector line, and practice our German by arguing with the German students about communism and so forth. Maybe it was a little foolish, but we got over and back okay.
Unbelievable. Okay, Director Woolsey, so we have this horrific event now in Berlin that we were talking about. Terrorists in a truck, you're going shopping with your children, you get run over. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. Look, this was allegedly a Pakistani refugee seeking asylum. Isn't this an argument to stop refugees for a while coming into the United States, or until we can figure this out?
Well, I think it's probably not all refugees, but I think you can go country by country. I don't think it's constitutional to say you can't to come in if you're a Muslim, but I do think you can limit people country by country and just say nobody from Syria comes in for a while we get our act together. But, even then, the vetting and so forth is like playing goalie, and if that's all we do, it's like having a really good hockey team and everybody plays goalie. Nobody goes on the offense. We need to go on the offense and go after, I think, the price of oil. We got to have alternative fuels like methanol with an M, wood alcohol, and others that you can switch to when you fill up at the pump and drive the price of oil and gasoline down. If we do that, the ISIS is is cut apart. Iran is badly damaged, and they are the leading terrorist state in the world. Russia is checked in its attempt to dominate Europe because its entire economy is really based on oil. We ought to drive that price down and take advantage of a strategic undertaking against them, and not just take each shot as they shoot at us and see if we can stop it. We're going to lose that fight.
Look, there's no question the approach that we're taking now is not working, right? So you got to change something. So, I mean, that makes sense to me. But, Director Woolsey, you keep going down the same path day after day. Doesn't matter what you say, you're going to end up in the same place, which is failure right now as far as ISIS is concerned. Hey, I got a lot of questions. Let me just ask you this. A lot of people refer to this group as ISIS, yet the Obama administration and those that are with him on his policy refer to it as ISIL, taking the S out for Syria. Any particular reason for that?
I don't know, and I think they add L for the Levant.
Yes, Levant.
For essentially that part of the world. I don't know that there's any particular significance to it. The Arabic that they use is Daesh, which is for non-Arabic. Some people over there, I've forgotten exactly which batch. That is an insult. I just call them jihadis, all of them, because that's what they are. That's what they call themselves. It's a religious war. That's what they are in against us. But I've several of these different expressions for ISIS or ISIL or Daesh have nuances to individual groups over there that sometimes it's kind of hard to sort out.
Like at the end of the day, they're all the same, and they have one objective, and that is to harm us. That's basically it. You look at this Berlin situation, and you know what's going to happen here. I mean, it's just a matter of time, right?
Right, and you're not going to be able to stop it by screening buses or whatever. When they have all the tools they need in just our infrastructure, we're not going to find them or it by their behavior patterns and so forth. There is one thing we can do, which is keep track with big data management of not individuals, but of the patterns of movement and purchases and so forth, and do with data that it's in the hands of a number of companies. They use it for advertising and so forth, like Sapient. a really marvelous collection of software and data. We could probably do a hell of a lot better job of keeping track of some of these people with that than we do now.
Director Woolsey, I want to get to our relationship with Russia, which is going to change, we think, under President-elect Trump. And he has said that, why not try to seek ways where we have common ground instead of having the antagonistic attitude that we've had. How do you see that playing out, sir?
Well, I think it's a long shot, but I've seen both sides of Russia for years of the Cold War. I've negotiated on 3 treaties with them, and at one point had to pound the table in the office of the Minister of Defense and get into a shouting match with him. I've seen that side of Russia, and I've also seen them just after the Berlin Wall went down, when I took over a set of negotiations for the Conventional Forces in Europe Treaty. You've never seen such friendly Russians as seeing that the Berlin Wall is collapsing. They realized what that meant. And we got along fine and negotiated a 110-page treaty in 7 months, 26 countries. It all worked out real well. So as long as they are set back on their back feet, so to speak, I think it's possible to have relatively good relations with Russia. But if they feel that we are weak, as I think the Obama administration has led them to believe, you will never get anything out of them that's cooperative. They got to feel like they're losing to you, and at that point, they'll start thinking about how maybe they need to be nice.
So your view is we got to stand up to them, kind of the carrot and the stick approach.
Yeah, or maybe Teddy Roosevelt's stick. Speak softly and carry a big stick.
Right, exactly.
That's fine. We can speak softly, and if President-elect Trump thinks he can persuade them to work on something together with us, that has happened occasionally in the past. It's not impossible. It's just hard unless they're set back.
Let's go to China. See, when we have you on for 20 minutes, sir, we get to cover everything, because who better to talk about it with than former CIA director under Bill Clinton, James Woolsey, and he's been all over the world and done so many things. So China, right under our sailors' feet, if you will, take one of our submarine drones. They take it and then they give it back. What is up with that?
Well, I think it was coming back at us for the telephone call with Taiwan, and they wanted to do something, but they wanted to show that they were asserting themselves in the South China Sea area, although this is not part of the South China Sea that they claim. And they wanted to do something that didn't put any American sailors or anybody at risk. They didn't want to end up like, in a big confrontation. So I think they went for one of these little drones that basically just samples the water for keeping track of what's going on in the seas and the salinity and so forth, and doesn't have any people or any classified material on it as far as I know. So they wanted to do something, and out in the open seas is a direct rude gesture to us because we're the big sponsor of freedom of the seas.
Right.
But it wasn't something that endangered lives the way flying within 10 feet of the mast of one of our ships does, for example.
So it was basically just a finger in the eye.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Right. A thumb in the eye, but with no harm done. Now, remember, you served under President Clinton. Remember when China was rattling their saber concerning Taiwan, who they see as a breakaway republic, if you will, that's still part of their fold. Remember your former boss, Bill Clinton, sent 2 aircraft carriers in. Remember that?
Yes, he did indeed. He had an interesting characteristic, which was that unlike a lot of politicians, I think he learned over time.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's always been very critical of himself about not intervening in Rwanda to prevent the massacre of close to 1 million people there, and he said that failure to intervene was the worst decision of his presidency. The next time something like that came up, when the Serbs were massacring the Kosovars, he used air power very decisively. We lost no pilots and no planes. Milosevic died in prison, and there's a Bill Clinton Avenue in Pristina in Kosovo. So he learns, and not all politicians do. I don't think. I think he saw what one has to do in the Balkans sometimes in order to make sure people know how they need to treat you. And one excellent example of that is another president who's my favorite in modern times is Ronald Reagan. He was as he was being sworn in. As he was on the Capitol steps taking the oath of office, the Iranians turned loose our hostages. I don't think they wanted to go into a new presidency with Ronald Reagan. They weren't sure what he was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see that kind of attitude in Iran and other places of concern as our new President Trump comes into office.
It was like the Richard Nixon presidency. A lot of our foreign adversaries thought he was crazy. They never knew what the hell he was going to do, and so they didn't do anything. Right?
Yeah, part of that. That's, you make that case, I think.
Part of the mantra. We're out of time. I want to thank former CIA Director R. James Woolsey for being with us. Now, do you have any new work coming out, Mr. Director? When are we going to see a new book? When?
Oh,
we're all waiting on it.
Haven't written one. I've edited several, but haven't written one. I get so darn busy on articles and speeches and one thing or another that I haven't got a book coming out.
One of the most fascinating men in America. You're the guy that should be on that commercial, right? The most interesting man in America, former CIA Director Jim Woolsey. Whether or not you drink Triple X beer or whatever it is, you should be in that ad. I think so. That's got my vote. Plus, you're better looking than that guy anyhow. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Director, on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Always an honor. Thank you.
Good to be with you.
All right.